Hi folks, this is Tony for aminutetomidnight.com with a short video update. I just want to show you some things which I have seen that have come to light recently which are very concerning, I believe. First off, I want to look at this United Nations News article. Virtual concert unites Pacific with the world in battling COVID-19. From August the 15th, 2020, the first of its kind televised and digitally streamed Pacific Unite Saving Lives Together concert called on regional leaders and citizens to unite in the global fight against COVID-19, the United Nations said on Saturday. From across the region, the UN in the Pacific brought together artists, UN leaders, heads of state and international celebrities in the world's first regional COVID-19 concert. The 2.5-hour show featured contributions from 12 Pacific Island nations, including musical performances from various people, and that includes New Zealand. Now, what I want to do now is show you that right at the end of the concert, the final act closed with a moving performance of a song called We Will Rise, written about the coronavirus pandemic in the Pacific and performed by the Pacifica Voices and the international school Suva. Sung primarily by children and youth, the heartwarming lyrics concluded on a note of hope. That's what they call it, a note of hope. Around the world, we're closing borders. COVID-19 is on the rise. A new world order behind closed doors. The storm will pass and we will survive. We will rise again, and so on. I'm going to show you the video of that musical performance. It is so full of Freemasonry and all-seeing eye, basically illuminist propaganda, big time. Well, straight away there you should see a pentagram, pretty obvious in the shape, and an eye, very strongly Masonic symbol, and of course also found in witchcraft. And then now we have somebody saluting the UN, presumably a soldier or whatever. So you should be able to clearly see the development of an eye in the stadium here. And then listen to the words new beginnings and changing our lifestyles. So that basically, it's propaganda for the Phoenix will rise, that type of thing. Very, very much illuminist symbolism. Then you have the typical rise up and unite, the sheep all getting everyone into the hive mind mentality. And then the We Will Rise chorus comes into play, which is all the phoenix rising from the ashes symbology, which is very much an integral part of the United Nations, and in fact that can be found, the phoenix rising from the ashes, in the mural in the United Nations Security Council chambers. It's very much part of the Luciferian nature of the spiritual side of the United Nations. Then notice how they begin to use United Nations security forces or soldiers, and then you see like a barcode or QR code type of thing appearing. Does that tell us that soldiers are going to be enforcing this? And of course, when you look, it's all filmed from the angle of inside an eye. the all-seeing eye. And then you see waves rolling across it like it's a QR code scanner or a barcode scanner or a retina scanner, something along those lines. And now it looks like the letter symbol that is found on the Masonic apron. We are then shown more images of the United Nations blue helmets soldiers, which will be used to enforce these things as time goes on. And that then moves into what I see quite clearly to be a reference to the Masonic square and compass in the image. Again, it's all centered in the all-seeing eye, which is a very strongly Masonic symbol. This whole COVID-19 pandemic, plandemic, whatever you want to call it, has been used and is being used to push us into a global government, and it's quite plain here in this United Nations propaganda video where they are heading us, the United Nations, and into solidarity and the use of United Nations security forces. So now, in the light of that, look at some of these developments from the dailymail.co.uk. Scott Morrison, that's the Prime Minister of Australia, says the coronavirus jab will be mandatory for Aussies as thousands of moronic anti-vaxxers launch social media war against the vaccine. Federal government has agreed to buy a potential coronavirus vaccine from the UK, and he has said, Scott Morrison said today, this was on August the 18th, that he will make the jab as mandatory as possible. The vaccine needs to be taken up as widely to protect people who cannot take it. And that, quite frankly, is scary. He said there that they want to achieve 95% vaccination rate. Then if you look across the ditch to New Zealand, the other day, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, said, so far the rollout of our resurgence plan is working as we intended, Ardern said. The government will be deploying an additional 500 Defence Force personnel to managed isolation facilities and at the border. Strengthening security is an important step, Ardern said. This is basically a slow rollout of martial law, folks. Implementing detentions at the border and removing people from their homes to quarantine if they have the coronavirus. Ardern also said that we are implementing here a strategy that cuts across multiple government agencies. Health is deeply embedded in the rollout and we do need to support them. Now, with the additional 500 Defence Force staff at managed isolation facilities, that brings the total number of Defence Force personnel supporting the COVID-19 response to around 1,200. And the boost will be rolled out over the next 6 weeks. Of course, New Zealand under Ardern has just delayed the elections by a month. So they've delayed the elections by a month to October when they should have been September. The New Zealand Defence Minister, Ron Mark, says that returnees, that's people coming into the country at the border, are more likely to comply with a member of the military than a private security guard. And I would just like to reiterate the fact that Ron Mark is a Freemason, and Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, had a Freemason scholarship to get her through university, and also that she was the President of the International Union of Socialist Youth. Without a declaration of martial law, the New Zealand Defence Force personnel had no authority to stop, arrest or detain any civilian unless that person was in a defence area. But you can just see this as a conditioning people for martial law, I believe. It's not only people entering New Zealand's borders that are in quarantine facilities, by the way, folks. Everyone that tests positive for the COVID-19 virus in New Zealand is now moved to a quarantine facility. You can't self-quarantine at home. And there are at least 125 people that have been moved into an Auckland quarantine facility for positive cases, and that includes household contacts as well. Meanwhile, Bill Gates, in an interview with the editor-in-chief of The Economist magazine, which is another globalist institution really. It was very much Rothschilds run, at least 50% owned by the Rothschilds. Gates has said that he's predicting that by the end of 2021 a reasonably effective vaccine would be in mass production and a large enough share of the world's population would be immunized to halt the pandemic in its tracks. The Gates Foundation has already pledged more than $350 million to the COVID pandemic response, and of course he has a large share in the vaccine production itself. Unfortunately, I think that the majority of people around the world are so frightened of this pandemic and want life to get back to what they think is normal that they will accept pretty much anything to get there, whether it is vaccines that are compulsory and chipping and QR codes everywhere and whatever else. They will just blindly accept it, and who knows where this will go from there. But folks, it is time to really wake up. So that's all I wanted to add into this video. There's more I could say, but I think that'll do for now.